What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to UAP Tuesdays on The Big Thing. Thanks for joining us here again. We got a great episode today, man. I'm excited to talk about so many different things. Yeah, me and Riley, but shit, man, I got Jessie Michels here from American Alchemy. We're going to break down everything. I want to ask this guy so many questions. We're going to talk about David Grusch. We're going to talk about the fact that this dude had the first interview with David Grusch after the hearings. How the fuck did that happen? I want to find that out. I want to find out a lot of different things. I want to talk about, speaking of David Grusch, we had this stuff that just went down, people questioning some of the stuff that he was saying as far as that Sean Kirkpatrick wanted to meet with him, and Grusch said that never happened. Then it turned out some reports that said that did happen. What's the story? Has Jessie talked to David at all about these types of things? Because this is like the first big whistleblower, and people are kind of hanging on every word, and he hasn't commented yet. So we'll talk about that. Speaking of whistleblower, there's another guy that came out, and he's all over the place, and he's on Twitter Spaces doing it. He's not on News Nation. He's on Twitter Spaces. I got to get Jessie's opinion. Is this guy legit? What is it? There's other things. There's tons of other things we're going to talk about on today's show. But before we do it, if you're brand new to the channel, you've never been here before, first of all, thank you for being here. Click that button, man. We're trying to get to 200,000 faster than we got to 100. I think we can do it, but you got to hit that button. We also have another show, another channel. It is called Down to Earth with Kristian Harloff. It is our Monday through Friday where we go over the phenomenon. We talk about it. Stories every Monday through Friday. So click that one also. All right. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Here we go. It's the big thing. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is the Big Thing UAP Tuesdays. It's myself, Kristian Harloff, Mark Yodius Riley.
Kristian, my consciousness is no longer with me. It's hovering somewhere near Uranus.
Yeah, it's because you had a baby, man. That baby took your consciousness a long time ago.
Probably hovering around her right now.
And joining us today, been a big fan of this guy, and he was so happy when we were talking to each other. He's like, yeah, man, I can come in. It's Jessie Michels. What's up, man?
What's up? How you doing?
Good to have you, brother.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great having you,
I
man.
love what you guys are doing, and
Thank you.
Here.
That's well, likewise.
Yeah.
Because so I was telling you before we started. So the way that I kind of teased it in the intro, but obviously, so our story, and I've told this people, you don't need to say this every time. I was like, I do for new people that are coming in, right? It's like because I see people a lot of times when you're going through, and you know all the names, you know, the way your brain works, I'm fascinated with it. But like, you know all these names of the different people that have been involved with the phenomena forever. I don't know them as much, you know. Like I'm learning it. I'm someone who was still doing movie reviews and TV reviews, and I got fascinated by this. I found a documentary once, and I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and then just randomly, as I started getting into it, that's when Grusch appears on News Nation.
Yep.
And I'm like, whoa, this is what a good time to get into it, right? And then the hearings happen. So as we start covering this, then this interview pops up, David Grusch. And I'm like, who got the interview afterwards? And it's you. It's your channel. And I was like, wow. And it was such an insightful, it was so well done. Yeah. And you just broke it down, and it's so the way you like intellectually, the way you approach this topic and all this stuff on your channel, I should say, fascinating. But tell me about the Grusch thing. How do you get in contact with him, and how do you get him to come on to your show?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for both having me now and for covering it back then, and for covering the Townsend Brown stuff. That means a lot. As far as getting in touch with him, I had known him for 2 years before that.
Okay.
Wow.
So I had a friend who was in the Space Force. He had just left the Space Force when I met him, and he was starting a company. So I work in venture capital. That's like the day job.
Yeah. Okay.
And I met him in that context.
Okay.
And his past was he had worked in the Air Force and then the Space Force. And in the Air Force, he had worked alongside David Grusch. And so, you know, I'd known he was in the Space Force when I was, talking to him about his company. And I was like, hey, man, like, what do you know about UFOs? I'm kind of obsessed. And he was like, I know a little bit, and I know enough to know that there's a there.
Wow.
But I have a buddy you really have to meet. Yeah. And that's when he introduced me to Dave Grusch. And
wow.
We just, I don't know, stayed in touch period. I mean, like, you know this, like when both of you guys do, like when you're into this topic, it's a small world, and it's almost like sometimes it kind of, you get fatigued, and sometimes you're like, I can't deal with UFOs right now. Like, I got to deal with real life. Right. And then other times you're like, I kind of feel like intellectually lonely. Like, you know, you go down these deep rabbit holes, you're like, I have nobody to talk to about this sort of stuff. And here is a guy who, in some ways, kind of kept me going because, look, you guys know this too. There are a lot of guys in the whistleblower world, government world that are, less than savory characters.
Yeah.
And, you just like listen to the way they speak and kind of like, interact with them a little bit. And you're like, there's something up. You have kind of an agenda behind the agenda. And with him, I just never got that sense. And so that was very heartening to hear. Because I knew enough about the history of the whole thing to know that there's something here. It's not pure bells and whistles. This isn't just like a fake fabricated thing. But, as you guys know, there's just so much smoke and mirrors and counter intel and BS and smoke bombs. And then here's this guy who, has mild autism and, doesn't seem like a liar to me and has like serious credentials. And like all of his colleagues, including the guy I met him through, speak super highly of him. And I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. And so you knew, 2 years ago, so that was about a year before he did his interview with Colhart?
Yeah, I knew before. Yeah,
so,
and I was like, advising him a little bit on stuff.
Okay.
Wow.
So that's interesting also. So when he does that interview, because one of the things, I mean, if you've seen us talk about it, you've heard like my biggest, everybody has like the thing that they are like for you, it's, I think anti-gravity is a big thing, right? For you.
Definitely. Yeah.
For me, my big thing that I want is the lack of news coverage, right? Yeah. I go on about it. Yeah. And I don't mean channels like yours, channels like mine, News Nation, which has seemed to like kind of fall off for a little bit, which is interesting. You have any insight of why that is?
Yeah, I think generally, like, if there's a whole cottage industry of like UFOs, and I think if you treat it somewhat cynically, and this is not a critique of News Nation, especially, like I think they've done a great job in the past, but like, and look, there is a void that needs to be taken up in because mainstream media is not covering this. And so like I'm all for people like getting into the topic, but I think if your motives are at all business or cynical, you can be like a leaf blowing in the wind. So like you get the Arrow thing comes out and Kirkpatrick thing comes out, and like if you're not like genuinely super into the thing and like go down these like bizarre rabbit holes in your own free time just out of pure passion, it's a brittle sort of conviction that you have that's easily breakable by one of these sort of counter events.
Well, look what happens today with John Oliver. Like, so John Oliver. So like if you type in UFO news, right? The first thing that pops out, 27 articles about how John Oliver's taking a dump all over it, right? And that's the stuff. Like, I've had people who don't pay attention to this topic at all, but know that I cover it, said, hey, did you see that John Oliver thing? And it's like, yeah, did you watch the thing
I
at all?
only watched a couple of clips. So I'm actually curious if you guys want to round out my knowledge. I only saw that he was talking about Roswell a little bit, and
but it was all balloons and other stuff. And I'm with you. I watched mostly clips, and the stuff that I watched through what I saw was, it just seems like someone who heard a lot of things like the balloons. Like, how much of the rabbit hole did he really go down, and how
definitely
much?
Not.
Definitely not. And it feels like he just kind of regurgitating stuff that we've seen many times over in different reports of like. Where's the reference? Again, referencing stuff that you do very well is that you'll go through some of your documentaries, you'll go through articles and things that I had never heard of, but you back it up with, say, articles and other things. Like, there was one thing you said, and you said, like, look, I haven't it was the thing about Kennedy, to where Kennedy might be locked into UFOs. There was some document that had come out, right?
Yeah.
But you said, I've reached out, I've tried to get confirmation of whether this thing is legit or not, but you present that.
Yeah, of course.
That's Tell me that, John Oliver, when you're going through it. Like, look, I did the investigation. This is the one side. This is what I believe. The things I look at this and I see this particular thing. To me, it seems like the balloons make the most sense. Even though I heard the military people saying this, but he doesn't mention any of the military people who talked about it.
Well, that seems to be the mainstream media. That's what they seem to gravitate towards, the thing that immediately either debunks it or says that this is bullshit.
Right.
Because that's what, I don't know whether that sells more sells advertising more rather than sells, something like a military like Graves saying he saw something in front of the Senate, or his friends, flying with him, have seen something, and my dad, who claims has a picture of a UFO given to him by a general somewhere, who loves this stuff. I go, Dad, did you know there's Senate hearings? He goes, what? I'm like, when did you change? I mean, it's like, it seems to all kind of be couched under this, nothing's there, and they jump on that, and then what we're talking about kind of falls by the wayside.
But your dad has a connection to the whole.
No.
Okay.
He said I don't even know what or how he got this. He said a general gave it to me. I'm like, what general? He's like, I don't remember. But he has a picture.
Whoa.
And it's a picture of a UAP.
Yeah.
Of like a magnifying glass looking at a picture of a UAP, and somebody's taking a picture of that.
Interesting.
So that's his prized possession. But then I go, do you know that there are people standing in front of the Senate talking about first-hand encounters, that their military, their Air Force, or this? He goes, I had no idea. And that's what we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
That's the mainstream media not covering, like Schumer getting up there saying, we have a bill, let's get going.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, what?
Yeah. The smartest people I know, like one good example that's very public is Eric Weinstein, who I've worked with for years.
Yep.
You know, like thought I was an idiot talking on this very subject for a little bit. Started to go down the rabbit hole. For him, the main vector, you mentioned my thing being anti-gravity.
Yeah.
You have your thing. Like for him, it was physics because that's his field. So he does a lot of different stuff, but he has sort of an attempted unified theory in physics. And so he's all of a sudden thinking, okay, maybe certain people in the past have discovered what he's getting into right now.
Sure.
People like John Wheeler, Bryce DeWitt. Maybe there's sort of a secret branch of physics, and he knows enough. He doesn't know what the kind of the thing is,
right?
But he knows there's a there. There's just too much evidence around this sort of alternative lineage of physics that was really discussed in kind of the golden age of relativity in the 50s, and then kind of went black in the early 60s, maybe because it got somewhere, or and went black, or maybe it fizzled out. I don't know, but he knows there's a lot there. And I think anybody who's smart and thoughtful, and to your guys' point, they don't pre-crystallize knowledge. They don't hear one thing and they're like, okay, it's not it. It's not real. Or they don't hear another thing. They're like, it's definitely real.
Right.
They think probabilistically. I think that's really kind of essential for this whole topic. And then the last thing I'll say is, like, if I were a counter intel guy on UFOs, here's what I would do. I would set up a kabuki theater of people saying it's aliens, it's definitely aliens, and like super simplistic terms, very high level information. You don't really have a lot. And then I would set up this other thing of people sort of saying we have no evidence of aliens,
right?
And then all of a sudden it's just you're super focused on the one possible explanation of the thing being ET. You think maybe there's a cover up. But you're just interested in the tip of the iceberg, which is the existence of of UFOs.
Right. Sure.
And what I think is interesting is it throws the nature of reality on its head.
Totally.
If these things are real, our lives it has implications for religion, for science, for everything.
Yeah.
And nobody's, I think, or there are a few people who are like thinking about it more deeply in those contexts. And I think I'd urge people to think in those contexts and to think about themselves too, and not I don't know, you could be like a leaf blowing in the wind. You get demoralized because Arrow comes out with its report, and then you get really hopeful on the flip side.
That's exactly how I feel right now. Exactly how I feel, because for me, what got me all hyped up, obviously the hearings, and then and as Riley mentioned, we've mentioned it many times over, it was baffling to me that the Senate Majority Leader is up there talking about and using NHI inside of this language that he's presenting. As well as rounds, and nobody's covering it. People had heard about the hearings.
Yep.
But nobody's covering that stuff. But I was like, okay, it doesn't matter, because they will hear about it, because this bill, once it gets passed, it's going to change things. And then the Soul Foundation stuff, we started hearing about the leaks and the rumors of what was going on there. And then when you actually see those videos that came out after the thing got gutted. But when you saw that, they were so dependent. I had Tim Gallaudet on the show, and he talked about this, and he said, yes, we did think that was going to get passed, and I love that dude, by the way.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's
awesome. Good guy.
Great dude, and really like...
I just met him yesterday.
He's fantastic. He's fantastic, and but he's like, you can tell, like he's one of these people, as you mentioned, there are some people that you mentioned, you're like, well, and we'll talk about a few of them too, where it's like, it might be legit, might not be legit. That dude's legit.
Oh, yeah.
That dude legit.
Yeah, and earnest. Just like,
super
in
earnest.
it for the right reason.
Yeah, and I asked him, I've mentioned this a handful of times, but I said to him, given the opportunity, would you testify? He didn't blink. He's like, absolutely, I would testify.
Yeah.
Because all the stuff, I didn't know a lot about what was going on under the water, and I saw the thing by Dark.
That's insane.
Yeah, the doc that.
There's a ton going on
of
under the
USO
water.
stuff.
Yeah.
Ton
There
of stuff.
seems to be always a sighting that could be tied to water somehow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Near water, or obviously the jellyfish video. There's a, they said, oh, it went into the water and then took off. So what is that?
What are your thoughts on that jellyfish video?
Yeah, I go right there.
I don't know. I don't know if I have like super articulate thoughts
I've
on
been
it.
back and forth on that thing, man.
I try not to, because it's like you saw something in 2010, right?
I did.
In Michigan.
I saw. Yeah.
So it's like, and I've seen something. I have a lot of friends who've seen something.
Ooh.
So it's like and Jeremy Corbell's doing great stuff, but he like comes out with a new video. It's like I don't care that much because it's like I think that I know it's real. It's like I don't need that to confirm my own belief.
Right.
But I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people, so it's important to do. But I don't know. I've had very legit people kind of on the inside who I'm in touch with say I think this is real and legit. So that makes me think it's real and legit because I trust them. But I don't know. I can't come out as definitively.
Totally, and that's
real.
I feel the same because it's like I love the fact they say that at the end of it just goes right into the water. I'm like, we need that. Yeah, I got to see that.
Well,
but
that and then the movement,
and then the movement out of it. But to jump back into what we're talking about,
there's always something missing, right? It's like the Nimitz thing. It's like you just have the FLIR stuff. You don't have radar. You don't have optical. You don't have it's just thermal. And the other stuff is supposedly exists, and so we need the corroborated multisensory stuff. And it's this bizarre okay, why can't we just get that?
That's right, and and I think that's part of the frustration. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, the videos that were released in 2017, like the Go Fast and the Tic Tac, that I thought we were doing a show over at an old company we were working for, and that was all movie based, a little bit of news and all that stuff. But that was something we both look at each other. I had my experience in 2010. I'm like, okay, here's something. I thought it would just change the narrative completely just from those videos, and it feels like it didn't. Does it feel that way to you as well?
I think it did not. I think the 3 videos in 2017 plus the revelations around ATIP helped, but I don't think clearly because we're still talking
here.
about this. We're still here, and the Arrow thing. I can't name the amount of people who've sent it to me. I'm sure to you guys as well. Where it's like, okay, I don't believe now.
Right.
So clearly, not enough. And in an age of, I think that the original Dark Ages were, it was a dearth of information. Nobody has pre-Enlightenment. And you could say we're in a Dark Ages again, and the modern Dark Ages is the relativization of all information. And so I'm not a VFX guy, I don't know if you guys are, but with the advent of AI, which, I think a lot of the AGI stuff is a little overhyped, but the idea that you can fake a lot of these videos with high veracity, if you can definitely do that. Yeah. And so the hinging your belief on the video stuff, I think, is going to be weaker and weaker on a go forward basis. And that's why I try to focus on more historical personnel stuff, science and theory, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, you said that, and we mention it a lot, and my feeling is you follow the science. I feel like there's going to be some kind of discovery, science-based, that can either prove or disprove this. And I feel like that would be a huge win for this conversation. But then you go to what you were just saying with the Dark Ages. I feel like we are there because we're also in an age where you could say, here's proof, here's an image or somebody saying that it's true or that have firsthand knowledge, and somebody over here goes, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
And then that narrative can start. Right.
Well, and that's why I don't link back two of those things that you just talked about, because you talk about the deep fake and the how you can make anything look real these days, and also bring it back to Weinstein. Weinstein is so convinced, or not convinced, just against the theory that the interdimensional stuff. He's every time that's brought up, he's like, it's ridiculous. He's definitive on that. When I've heard him talk about that, and he didn't shit on Grusch at all from the tip, because Grusch kind of never, I don't necessarily, you can tell me better, but I don't think he necessarily definitively said that as much as he kind of hinted at it.
Yeah, he was like, it's possibly holographic overlay on our 3D reality.
Yeah, I think Luna kind of slipped up at one point and said something along the lines of dimensional, and maybe she just from what she had, interdimensional, what she had heard or whatever. But between that and then the deepfake stuff, I'm sure you're familiar with Ashton Forbes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it's a perfect example where, like, I don't know, he seems more and more earnest, the more, encounters I've had with him. But it's tough. I'm just not a VFX guy, and so I can't
So you
say.
can't tell. So what we're bringing up is
What do you
that
guys
so
think?
he's supposed to come on the show as well.
Okay, cool.
And so Ashton Forbes has the footage of, remember the Malaysia flight where we had the orbs around the plane?
Right,
They think
yeah.
MH370. Yeah.
Yes, and he is convinced. He's convinced that this, and from breaking it down, I saw him on Vetted, and I saw him, and he is convinced that these orbs were not necessarily. He doesn't think that it's necessarily NHI.
Right.
He thinks it's more down the line of what
He thinks it's like Lockheed terrestrial tech.
Yes,
Yeah.
he thinks it's more so of what you covered very well with essentially what Townsend Brown started to develop. And if you're able to bend space time and whatever it might be, and it does say, I watched that Netflix doc on that flight, and that
I want to see that.
and the American we're very involved in the discovery of that. flight.
There's a lot of weirdness. So I you could definitively say there's a lot of weirdness around the flight.
Yeah,
and it's you can't put a bow on that event as like we have an explanation.
Right.
There's some weird stuff around it. Some of the people on the plane. There's some precious cargo.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think what was it, the Freescale, superconductor work or whatever. Some of the engineers were on that plane. There was some other, I think, sensitive stuff on the plane. So I wouldn't rule out, something weird going on. It's just with these orbs circling the thing and then teleporting it. It's I don't know.
It's crazy to think, because that's the whole point. It's like you look at that and then you have people who can say, yeah, we can do that. It's like, sure, but I hear conflicting things.
Yeah.
Has there been anyone that has actually claimed making that with the actual proof? I know the people that tell me, I made it last week in my basement, but who actually, someone has said, well, here are the files.
Yeah.
And I did it. It doesn't seem like that's been.
Yeah.
Have you, so do you?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I like the Townsend Brown stuff. I can't definitively say that we now have warp drives because of Townsend Brown.
Yeah.
I know that, and I think anybody who says that for sure is full of shit. Can I say that I think that represents an inroad to an alternative path of physics that could be super productive in terms of space travel, space-time, engineering sort of stuff, and possibly represent all sorts of breakthroughs in novel comms. I'm pretty sure of that, and I'm becoming higher and higher conviction there.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying our interview with Jessie Michels. What a smart dude, first of all. I just love talking to this guy and getting his insight on these things, and the rest of the interview is just amazing. But as we tell you guys each and every week here, that we are blessed that you guys have been watching, and we are blessed that we're able to get sponsors to keep us going on the show. And people ask us all the time, they like what we're doing here and they want to support us. And I say the best way to support us is to get yourself something also. So let me tell you about a few of our sponsors right now. All right, guys, this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. So BetterHelp, I've been telling you guys about BetterHelp for a while now. We've had a lot of people that they've been helped out by. So this is why the big thing is sponsored by BetterHelp, because what's the first thing you need to do? If you had an extra hour in your day, would you go for a run? Would you take a nap? Would you read a book? Would you show up for a friend? Well, the problem is a lot of us spend our lives wishing that we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. So I've mentioned Roxy Stryer. She's talked about it many times. She's really benefited from BetterHelp. I've had people inside of my family that have benefited from BetterHelp because talking to someone helps. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's online, it's designed to be convenient, it's flexible, and it's suited to your schedule. You fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime, no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/bigthing today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/bigthing. Vessi. So, John, I got these new shoes, and they have it's like rain wear. It's really, really It's incredible. I love. They sent it to me a while ago, but I'm so excited to tell them about them. Like for us, I want to tell you that Jessie has like this innovative. It's like footwear, and it's designed for spring weather. It's great. So Stormburst Jessies are the ones that I really want to kind of emphasize, and they're your go-to for every setting, city streets to outdoor adventures, enhancing your style and activity with ease. So you can, whether it's snowy trails, wet streets, morning dew walk. So whether you're facing unexpected snow or slippery paths, it's so crucial in general to have these. Like I'm planning a move. I've talked about this, but it's been raining a lot in LA, and I've been wearing my vesties everywhere. And you guys seen it. I've been wearing the one hoodie that I have that they sent me. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. I love these hoodies. I've worn it on in so many different videos. They have all-weather, all-occasion footwear from beach days to snowy commutes. They have so many different things. You should elevate your spring wardrobe when you travel with Jessie's Stormburst shoes. You can discover more at vessie.com/bigthing. Get your pair today and get an automatic 15% off your first purchase at checkout. And be ready to step out into style. It is great stuff. I love Jessie. I really, really enjoy Jessie. Let me tell you guys about Nutrafol. I'm going to tell you guys about Nutrafol. I'm very excited to tell you about Nutrafol. I've told you about Nutrafol many times over, and I've gotten people, and Nutrafol even said, like, we're back because the audience is listening, and they're checking it out, and it's working. Because if you didn't know, did you know that 80% of men are going to experience hair thinning in their lifetime? Because it's normal. It doesn't have to be your fate. You can get ahead of it with Nutrafol. What is it? Well, it's a clinically tested hair growth supplement for men. A lot of times you blame genetics, but there are multiple things at play when it comes to hair thinning. So what is Nutrafol? It is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand with over 1 million people seeing thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding. You can take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. And for a limited time, Nutrafol is going to offer our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping. When you go to Nutrafol.com/men, you got to enter that promo code BIGTHING. You can find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and hairstylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, Nutrafol.com/men. You got to enter that code BIGTHING. Nutrafol.com/men, promo code BIGTHING. Very excited to have them on board. All right. Thank you to our friends over at BetterHelp, Jessie, and of course, Nutrafol. They are great sponsors. We've had them for a bit. And as I mentioned before, take a look at our sponsors. Always pin our sponsors as the first comment. And they're always in the description. All right. Back to the interview with Jessie. Speaking of Townsend Brown, man, especially, that was such a...
I love that.
Oh, dude, what a fantastic piece of work that you did on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It was so good. It was so good. But are you at all, and you might be, I don't know, because you got your hands in so many pots, there needs to be a movie on that guy.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think it'd be awesome.
You need a producer on that movie.
Yeah, I'd love to help. That'd be really cool. I've thought of it, and I'm in touch with his daughter who makes a little cameo via phone on the show that I did. And I agree. He's like the most interesting person. He's literally like the Dos Equis guy meets Tesla. He's he's got this James Bond spy thing going on, and then he's also like a freak scientist. He's like a literal Iron Man or something. It's amazing.
Well, because Spielberg has a new UFO movie coming out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
What is it?
They didn't announce what it was. Last week they said Spielberg's
He knows a lot of shit.
David Kep.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So Spielberg, and I don't think it's a coincidence that he's doing it now.
No,
with
definitely
all the shit going down.
Absolutely.
I think that Steven Spielberg, they said,
and he just came out with the Netflix thing.
So
it's being pumped. For sure.
See, shit, man. Hynek and Jacques Vallée were consultants on Close Encounters.
Yeah.
So he's going to,
and I think he knows the time travel hypothesis. I think he's way more into the time travel thing than the ET thing. Spielberg.
Yes. Yes. So I'm wondering what that's going to look like, because I'm gonna be honest, when that was announced, it was announced that Scorsese's going and doing a Frank Sinatra biopic with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence. And then at the same time they said, and then Spielberg's doing a UFO movie, but they had no info on it.
Both of those sound awesome.
Awesome.
I can't tell which one is more awesome. Sinatra's pretty great.
It's pretty great. So I was like, but I'm like, what if Spielberg did a Townsend Brown movie?
That would be amazing.
Amazing.
That's
would love
tailor-made
that.
for him.
Tailor-made.
It kind of is.
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys are pumping me up. We should do that.
I'll get a hold of
Yeah.
Spielberg.
100%. Like,
Yeah.
because if he does a Townsend Brown, because you can link it all back to that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's a coincidence when it comes to the consciousness side of it. When it comes to how what are your thoughts on the Zimbabwe case? Do you?
I can't say I have super differentiated thoughts from the average person, but I think it happened.
Yeah.
I think was it 60 witnesses or something?
Something
It was
like
30 to 60. It was a
Something
lot,
like that. It was a lot of kids.
A lot
Yeah.
of people.
Kids,
And they remember it, all pretty well 20,
Yeah.
30
Even
years
to
later.
this day,
Although
yeah.
there was that one guy in the Netflix show who came out and he was like, I planted it or
But
whatever.
I talked to that director of
Okay.
that, and he
Yeah.
said that's the only. He said I almost didn't want to put that guy in because he's the only guy I didn't believe.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Is what the director told me.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I who I do trust is, and by proxy of Ralph Blumenthal's biography of him, is John Mack, the Harvard
Yes.
psychiatrist,
Yes.
who flew out there and he investigated and he thought it was very legit. And
Yeah.
it pattern matches. If something's super high strangeness and weird and doesn't look like a lot of the other
Yeah.
cases, I think I reserve a little more doubt. But in this case, it was next to a uranium mine. And, you have a ton of people corroborating it, and I think it was probably real.
Well, the reason I bring that up also is because of the conversation that one of the kids said, and this has been, and I think that, I think James Fox might have mentioned this as well, and I brought this up recently, that in one of the reports, the kid had said that the being said you don't know what you're capable of.
Yes. Yes.
And that to me, and then after watching,
And in space, we don't have love. You
Right.
have love on Earth, and so that's why we need to come down.
Right.
And so
That'd be great if that were the whole time.
I know, the whole
time,
time, and that's tailor made for Spielberg.
Right. It was like they were searching for knowledge.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Indiana Jones.
Yeah, well, you mentioned John Mack's another one who, by the way, because he was because Danny Sheehan represented him as well. I
Yeah, that's
believe.
right.
And
Yeah.
then because I had him on like a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about it, and like and it's going back to your thing when you talk about the frustration of it.
Yeah.
We have guys like when I had Sheehan on, and we talked to Steve Bassett, and we talked to these guys, and they're so convinced that like this information's going to come out and these things are going to happen. We're going to get this disclosure. And you had Jeremy Corbell say, "Wait, guys, we got some stuff coming," and Lou Elizondo in January saying, "We got stuff coming in January 2024." And then you get all these hiccups. You get the Arrow report. You get the Schumer thing that gets knocked down or gutted, rather. And you have this thing against Grusch, which we'll talk about in a second. You have this Oliver report that more people are covering than any of the other stuff that's coming out. And it just feels like that quote that I have said to exhaustion of George Knapp, they are better at their job than we are at ours.
Right.
And it just seems like they've been doing this for so long. That
Yeah.
It seems like you just mentioned it before. You have people going, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't believe this."
Yeah.
Where do you think we're going with this? Do you think that something's going to happen?
Well, I think the most empowering thing is like, don't wait on some external event.
Yeah.
Because even if the thing you are kind of implicitly waiting for were to happen, like, I don't know, some top DOD official were to be like, yeah, we have had, the former head of the DOE or something came out, something crazy like that. What would that actually change? I don't know.
Right.
Or if like you saw a picture of the craft per our conversation before, where it's a complete relativization of everything. I don't know how much that actually shifts. And so what I would, there's a really great, the End of the Invisible College by Jacques Vallée, which was written, I think, 1975. It's a really good overall kind of survey level overview of knowledge at the time, which is ironic because it's kind of where we're at now in terms of our theoretical understanding of this stuff because it's so confusing. But at the end, he goes, trust no one and look within or something.
Yeah.
And I think it might have been an Emanuel Swedenborg, this Swedish mystic, this sort of quoting him. And I truly think if I were to connect the UFOs with any branch of science, I think the Townsend Brown lineage is really interesting, but I think maybe the even more interesting kind of lineage is, a little field called parapsychology, which is it's an awkward term because I think it compiles all sorts of anomalies into one sort of scientific branch, and it started in the 19th century, and you have famous people like William James who were super into it, but really I think there's a clear tether between the end of quantum mechanics, sort of 1930s, 40s, and 50s. That's not the end of quantum mechanics, but sort of the end of a lot of the really productive stuff, and parapsychology. And I think all of the top quantum physicists at the time were flirting with the idea that your mind actually does collapse the wave function.
Yeah.
So you have this Schrodinger's equation. Real reality is actually probabilistic. It's a sort of wave function. It collapses into sort of a more discrete reality. Like, it's why macroscopic reality, you see this table, it's one table, it's, it's definite or whatever. And if you look at, a lot of the UAP stuff, it seems like, almost like a quantum macroscopic object. Like, these things are sort of appearing, they're materializing, dematerializing. The dirty little secret is they probably occur when you're in, certain heightened states of consciousness. Like, the only repeatable things around UFOs, heightened states of consciousness, A, and B, nuclear stuff.
Right.
And those are the 10. If that's defined science, it has to be somewhat repeatable. You have to look at those two things. And so if you were to take the consciousness angle, whether it's Schrodinger himself, who created this, equation that governs all of quantum mechanics, Niels Bohr, Max Planck, Heisenberg wrote a book about, called Life in Physics, where he talks about this. All of these guys flirted with the idea that the mind might actually have more of a connection with the material world than we understand.
Yeah.
And you don't have this sort of dualist, this is your mind and this is matter, and your consciousness formed as like a happy accident due to atoms randomly bouncing off of each other in like a sort of way that converged into you as a person. And so I think this is a very long-winded thing and way to answer your question, but I think if you look at a lot of the parapsychology research, like Princeton had a lab, it's all about your internal state actually governing your ability to affect the material world and even your epistemological, what you can see in the material world. And so I think developing your own, who you are as a person and your own kind of epistemic aperture, like what you can see, I think is the true route to understanding this stuff on a deeper level. And it's not fucking waiting for some news.
Yeah,
100%. But I think that I agree with 99% of that, because the 99% of it is everything you just said. You got to figure it out for yourself. You have to, and hence the manifestation of it all, right? Hence why all this. I follow a lot of that stuff where it's bizarre that I started, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I started getting into a place because when I worked for a company. I had started my own kind of trivia thing that was going. Good forbid, pandemic kind of hurt it, and I was in probably the worst place mentally that I had ever been in.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And it just What
was a trivia thing?
It was a movie trivia league that we ran for about 10 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we ran it it was great. It was like Kevin Smith versus Chris Jericho, and we sold out theaters in like Chicago. This guy was former 2-time champ.
That sounds like a blast.
It was a blast.
So you're a cinephile. You know your stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's the whole angle. You gotta
I want to
know
talk
it all.
movies with you.
Yeah, we'll do that next time. But we did. Awesome. But I combined it as basically wrestling with the wrestling personas. We had bad guys and good guys, but the trivia was real. And so we combined it. We had leagues and factions and titles and all that shit. So, but at a point once during the pandemic, it just became a lot that we had to go virtual. The views went down, and it was just a whole thing. But it was a lot that was going on mentally.
Yeah.
And I got on, I started my own channel, and I started to get in a better place, but I started to look at the manifestation stuff. I started looking at those things because it's more about the power of the mind, the power of consciousness, seeing how things. And at the same time, during that time, I discovered all this stuff and started paying. I don't think that's coincidence. I think it's like you're literally pushing yourself to
not at all. Yeah. I think it's definitely not a coincidence. And I think a lot of those guys were into this stuff too. Like Carl Jung obviously wrote a book about it, and then he wrote a book about called Flying Saucers. But also was very interested in synchronicities, and then I think it's very connected with the manifestation stuff, because that stuff can't be real at all if there is this sort of hard dualist cutoff between mind and matter, unless you're of the mind that if you just get into a specific mindset, you take the actions necessary to do the thing.
Right.
I'm not. I think I think if you were to actually poll people, I think if most people were actually honest with themselves, they would be like, yeah, in my life, there are many times where I've thought of something and it came into my life in a way that it wasn't just me mechanically working on the thing over a long time horizon. It just came into my life the next day. What the fuck is that?
Yeah.
We don't know. Well, and then you look at the government remote viewing, the 23-year psychic spy program from 1972 to 1995.
The Kona Blue. That was just you were bringing that up, and it's kind of interesting that you are bringing this up, that we are having this conversation, because that Kona Blue stuff that just dropped. You read it and you're like, consciousness, remote viewing, controlling something with your mind, is what just came out and got everybody talking.
Yeah.
This to me, like to go back to your point here, was like the manifestation when you want something so much. I mean, there's like, I wouldn't say religions, but there are like, people that, make a living going, manifest this, make a vision board, do these things, in order to bring something to you.
Yes.
It's very powerful, the mind. And that's where when I say the science could be the key, it's almost like going back to it's the mind that I think is the key. This gets me excited, the consciousness idea behind it. So Kona Blue, though, I wanted to get your take on it.
Yeah.
Because you sent that out, Kristian, and I read this and go, eh?
Well, inside of that. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So
right?
the Kona Blue thing comes out, and what I read from that was that Arrow releases this thing.
Yeah.
And essentially what it is that, hey, this is this thing that we pitched to the DOD, but they shot it down.
Yeah.
We can't. So we tried and we thought about all these things and tried to do all these things, but it didn't work. So there is no reverse engineering program. Is that pretty much the gist of it?
I think that would be Kirkpatrick's point. I think more broadly, what's really interesting is like when everybody references disclosure and like secret UFO programs, they're talking about programs that like ATIP that were like $22 million budget. Just to put that in perspective, an F-35 costs over $100 million, like a single F-35. So you're telling me that nature of reality, like we had a crashed vehicle more advanced than anything, prosaically understandable by humans, physics beyond us, and we're going to spend $22 million in reverse engineering. Makes absolutely no sense. And the Kona Blue thing is part of the ATIP thing. So I find it interesting, a little funny, that when everybody talks about disclosure and they talk about specific programs, they talk about ATIP, OSAP, Kona Blue, these sorts of things, all in like the 07, 08, 09, thing. And, at Skinwalker Ranch.
Yep.
And I think that those are attempts by people like Harry Reid and others to exfiltrate maybe certain things from actual UFO programs, sort of legacy stuff, put it into, get a more civilian actor, get more surface area on it. So there are a lot of smart people who aren't in government, especially now. Like maybe in the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was like, Lockheed Martin, CIA, Air Force, or whatever, like the best and brightest. That was it.
Yeah.
Now you have SpaceX, you have Palantir, you have all these like amazing like defense companies that are attracting like really smart people that it's civilians. And so I think there was, especially if adversaries have these things, that was part of the Grusch revelation. It's like maybe Russia, China, they have their own programs. Then what you want to do, especially if the program is super compartmentalized and it's all these kind of old stodgy, characters, that have very tight grips over, information secrecy and that sort of thing, which doesn't lend itself towards innovation all the time. What you want to do is you want to exfiltrate, certain things. Maybe here's a piece of a craft, here's some ideas, here's a very limited budget. See what you can do with it from the outside world. See what you can do with it. Person who has not been historically cleared to these programs, but we think could add value. You don't really know what you're working on. We know we're at the top of the pyramid. That sort of thing. That's my own theory. I don't know for sure that that's the case, but it's funny that everybody talks about those programs specifically in the context of disclosure.
Well, but I did want to ask with the Kona Blue stuff though too, because of disclosure, and they were released. Why were they released now though? Like after the and not like right after the hearings, right? Because Danny Sheehan had said that they were unclassified 2 days after Grusch and Fravor and after all three of them spoke in front of Congress. So if they were disclassified at that point, why now and not then? To kind of disprove it.
If you're asking me for guiding principles on how Arrow operates, I have no fucking idea.
That's
like
fair.
Literally, like none of it makes any sense. It's like just meet with Grusch. Like it's absurd. Like okay, you can look at classified info, meet with the guy. You know, get the info. Okay, it's fine. Some of this stuff, is there's an active DOJ investigation, so you can't get it directly from the ICIG. It's literally like preschoolers talking to each other. It's like no, I'm not going to walk over there. Like well, shut up. Just and then you can look into Kirkpatrick, and his background and, some of the people he's associated with and stuff. And I think you can come to your own conclusions. But, to me, the dude's a shill. Like it's sort of, I have no hope of him.
Have you ever seen Frozen?
Earnestly inquiring. I'm the only person on the planet who hasn't seen it. But
so there's a character they call the Duke of well, his name is the Duke of Weselton, but they call him the Duke of Weaselton.
Okay.
And I always say he looks just like Sean Kirkpatrick, so I say he's the Duke of Weselton. But
I do know that character, and he looks exactly like
he looks exactly like him. But speaking of that, though, because they had the green after the Greenwald had done that whole report, that just come out with the Black Vault website.
Yeah.
Since that happened, have you spoken to Grusch? What is your read on all the documents that kind of came out there? What does it present? And if you haven't spoken to him, do you think that Grusch is going to respond, because he should on that particular thing? And,
sure.
and if he does, how do you think he would respond to that?
Yeah. So are you referring to the Greenwald thing that came out, which is like the signal messages between Chris Mellon and Kirkpatrick?
Yes. And then all this, basically, he was in the lobby at one point, and they left him in the I guess he left him in the lobby.
Right.
Grusch had mentioned at one point that he had said that they never reached out to him, and then they were showing that they did. However, Grusch at one point, when he did say it, I think that they did look at it. I think there was like October is when he had said that, but then it was it linked up to prove that Grusch time-wise was telling the truth as far as that goes. But there's other things inside of that report that does question, well, what's going on with David Grusch, right? I don't think it doesn't validate the stuff that, and I've said it and I'll say it again to you. I believe Grusch. I believe I mean, you sat down with him, but from the way that I read him, it looks like he's sincere, or at least believes what he's saying, right? Yeah. But this, to me, if someone is calling out and saying, look at this report, Grusch said no, we're saying yes.
Yep.
Have you spoken to him about it, and do you think he will respond and should respond?
I haven't spoken to him about this specifically, but I have about Kirkpatrick, and like, I just don't think Kirkpatrick is an honest actor. Like, I wouldn't even trust that that's the case or whatever. And him sitting in the lobby, or if he was sitting in the lobby, like, I'm sure there was a good reason that he had to leave. But in all my conversations with Grusch, it's like he's had my number, and I've tried to reach out to him multiple times. And there's falls on deaf ears. So.
I think it's also because they said something along the lines where he didn't think that Arrow had the proper clearance to have all this information, but then they said in those documents that they did, and they were given permission to hear this stuff. So that's where they kind of combated him. But then Chris Mellon was also like, well, the reason why Grusch didn't want to talk to him is he thought Kirkpatrick might be under investigation. So it's all messy. I don't think it shows one point of view either way, but I do think that he should respond to it to say, like, hey, listen.
A part of me thinks he does, especially for people like you guys and me, and then there's like the sort of more mass media, like, does anybody read Black Vault and John Greenwald? There's like part of me is like, he kind of like did what he needed to do, brought 40 people forward to the ICIG. The ICIG has multiple hundreds of pages, 1,000-page plus like report on everything he's found, and it's like I don't know what more. And then he's been on Rogan and Tucker and stuff, and it's like I don't know what more you can do, and what you don't want to do is like get into this like food fight on Twitter sort of thing. And so he's like actively sort of like gone into this whole process not wanting to do that, to be and then you turn into this sort of shill and you start selling DVDs, and it's like he I think he'd never wanted to go that route. But yes, look, I will say, since the Black Vault stuff has come out, I have expressed frustration to him, saying I think we're going backwards and not forwards, and we need more information to come out. And I think he's in agreement with that. And then as to what that information is and tactically how you do it, I think it's sort of tough.
What about that op-ed? That op-ed he was supposed to do? Where's that?
I don't know exactly, but it's I know a little more than I can say.
Fair.
But it's I think it's going to come out.
Okay.
But yeah, it's one of these things where some of these publications are, it's really absurd. Like it's so clear that they are run by Intel, and like just have like a clear a priori bias towards like we just won't publish anything sort of pro disclosure at this point.
Yeah, that's back to my thing with the news networks. Yeah, right.
It's going to be a weird question, but I mean, how's he doing? It's like, because he's a human being. What I take from it and this whole process with Grusch is that, this is not something that is easy.
Yeah.
This is what he did turned me just absolutely upside down, sideways. I've had my experience in 2010, but then to see this, to get some kind of, not just confirmation, but here, like, he's so reliable. He's so, I believe him.
Yeah.
I genuinely wonder, because of all of this, that what it started, the chatter, the disbelief, the believing, the this, the that, the Twitter, the what have you. It's like, how is he?
I think he's good. And I think he's probably as frustrated as we are about like lack of progress. But I think he's overall good. And when you're sitting on as much as he's sitting on, there's a point of exhaustion you hit where you're like, I'm not gonna like get into some petty new argument, or I'm not going to try to curry favor in one spot.
Sure.
Because the tide is coming out, right now, even though like long term, I know I'm on the right side of history, sort of thing.
Right.
So
Right.
I think,
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's just so fun to listen to this guy talk about all these different things. I also love having conversations like this. I do a lot of these, I do a lot of pop culture stuff, a lot of movie stuff, and I love it. But I like to get into this zone. And there are more and more people that I'm meeting that get into these. So I'm enjoying this conversation. Anyway, as I mentioned, I want to tell you about, I want to tell you two really good sponsors here in both PXG for the golfers and for Tushy. That's right. It's fun. I love it. Here it is. Golfers, you know that PXG is on a mission to create the most high-quality, high-performance golf clubs in the game. Well, they're bringing the same passion for excellence to their new line of apparel, and I gotta say, they nailed it. I told Riley about this. Riley lost his mind. Riley was in the depths of having a new baby, but he was able to get some golfing in. I don't know how he did it, but he did it, and he loved it. He told me all about it. It was made with premium materials and technology designed for peak performance. These confidence-inspiring looks invite all-day play, taking you seamlessly from the course to the office to a night in the town. From golf trips to romantic getaways, these dynamic pieces add versatility and standout style to every event. PXG apparel has something for everyone. Pants, polos, sweaters, hats, quarter zips, joggers, jackets, skirts, everything that you want. I got this hat and this shirt, man. This shirt is slick. Love that shirt. It's my color too. I like that. So they're really comfortable. You guys know I like my hats. I like my black hats, and I like this hat. It's very comfortable, and I dig it. You'll see me wearing it a lot. It's great because they're designed for the course. They block out the sun. This shirt is really comfortable and perfect for the course. You can even wear it out. I will have meetings with this. I'll go to breakfast with this. Elevate your style game on and off the course with the PXG Spring Summer 2024 collection. You got to head on over to pxg.com/bigthing. You got to use that code though, bigthing, at checkout to save 10% on all apparel. All of my golfing friends are losing their minds with this stuff, and they're all asking me for stuff already. That's pxg.com/bigthing. Got to use that code bigthing to save 10% on apparel. pxg.com/bigthing. Use that code bigthing. As we get older, I'll tell you, the bidets. Oh, I love the bidets. I wish I would. I got introduced to the bidet a long time ago with Tushy, and it is so. What an invention! What an invention! At first you sit down and you want to feel classy. You want to show some class. You show some class by getting the bidet on your. I'm not gonna say it. I could have rhymed, but I didn't. It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. So let me tell you a little bit about it, because the next time you're sitting down on the toilet to squeeze out a big baseball bat, I'll tell you what happens. Hello Tushy wants you to remember one thing. The time that you're spending scrolling on your phone, it's not giving you peace of mind. You know what it's giving you? Hemorrhoids. That's right. Men spend twice as long in the bathroom. This is fact. I go into that bathroom sometimes for peace, but I wind up sitting trying to get some business done. And it is the one leading cause of hemorrhoids is prolonged sitting on the toilet. That's right. If you wipe with toilet paper, it's only going to irritate your butthole. That's what it's going to do. The Tushy, it cleans your butt with a targeted stream of fresh water, eliminating the need for painful wiping. So I really, really dig it. And it just feels nice. Again, I feel classy. I'm not going to lie to you. I feel classy. That's the whole thing. So Tushy Bidet cleans your butt 2 times better and gentler than wiping with toilet paper. For the rest of your life, you can leave the bathroom sooner feeling confident that your butt's actually clean. The bidet easily attaches to your existing toilet. You know how long it takes? Under 10 minutes. 10 minutes. was going to say 20. It's not true. It took me about 8 minutes. Without additional plumbing or electricity needed. Every Hello Tushy bidet comes with a 30-day hassle-free return and a 12-month warranty. So stop wiping until you bleed. Come on. Join the 3 million butts who've already made the switch to Tushy. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off your entire order when you use the code BIGTHING at checkout. That's 10% off your order at HELLOTUSHY.com, HelloTushy.com. Promo code BIGTHING. Yeah, man. All right, thank you to PXG and to Tushy. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to support the show, links in the description. Check it out. It helps out tremendously. It keeps us going. So, back to the interview. There have been other people, obviously, who've spoken up about this, but he is really like the first one to go in front, to have that hearing, to sit there with two decorated pilots at this hearing. And there were supposed to be other whistleblowers that, when you listen to Tim Burchett, who said that NASA was the one that said, like, hey, don't do that.
Yeah.
And then there's this talk of another hearing. There's this talk of more whistleblowers, 40 potential whistleblowers.
That's been most frustrating to me. It's like one of these guys got to come out.
It's got it. Well, so let me then I'm sure you've been paying attention to this Jason Sands stuff going on.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of all this. Because so for those people, again, Jason Sands was the guy. Now James Fox, who's very respected in the community.
Yeah.
Goes and makes he's making a new document, and he has this interview where he says that he's got this guy, and he's seen documents with this guy, he's seen pictures with this guy, and everyone's like, well, it's got to be this Jason Sands guy, because then Jason Sands comes out and he does this interview on Twitter Spaces.
Yeah.
Which
not a good first move.
What are you doing? That's where you need a guy like you to say, let me set up the News Nation or something, or do something, because you're doing Twitter Spaces right away. That made me go, huh? What's he doing there? And so he detailed a lot of stuff. Now, one of the things that threw me off with this, they asked him about Grusch. And he said, have you worked with Grusch?
Yeah.
And he's like, I've worked with Grusch. He called him Grusch.
Yeah.
Called him Grusch. Like, and we talk all the time. I'm like, well, why are you calling him Grusch?
Yeah.
And it's like that. And that could just be a little thing inside of my head because I'm just now at this point, I'm looking at, I try to have a skeptic point of view as much as I have the disclosure point of view in there too.
Yeah.
But this guy's talking about a lot of different things, because if the stuff that he's saying is accurate, and a guy like David Grusch goes, no, this guy's legit. James Fox he's legit. Leslie Kane was in there listening to this Twitter Spaces when this thing was happening.
Yeah, sure.
So if all these people back this guy up, and he turns out to be the whistleblower and says the kind of shit that he's saying, it'll blow the roof off the place.
Yeah.
But the first question is, are you following this guy, and what do you make of him?
I am following him. I met him once.
Okay.
So maybe the sort of revealed preference is that I didn't do a show with him.
Okay.
But I don't also actively distrust the guy. It's not like I don't want to knock him. But
you're like the rest of us. You want to see what's going on first.
I want to see what's going on first. And definitely kind of a weird initial PR move to do Twitter Spaces if you're like the first guy that like dealt with the material firsthand. So I don't know what your goal is there. But look, he seemed, when I met him, like pretty earnest and actually a little almost traumatized or something.
Yeah.
Like
interesting.
He had gone through like a lot.
Okay.
But I just don't know exactly what to make of him. And unlike Grusch, look, my opinion is, in order to get a real consensus shift and like closer towards that like disclosure moment, I think we need one of two things: a real Bob Lazar, or like not. Now, I'm not saying Bob Lazar was even fake, but like an undeniable Bob Lazar, like hapless engineer type,
right?
Where it's like, I was recruited into the thing. I have no intel credentials prior to like being recruited into the thing.
Right.
Like that would be really, really good, because you'd know all of the sort of manipulation abilities and like that, that's all kind of out the window. You can like see that this person's just like kind of this earnest dude. That, or at the top, sort of a department head, like a really credible, head of a government agency, head of the DOD, or Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Energy, that sort of thing. And then I don't know on Jason Sands. I think if he comes out with a lot more detail that we can corroborate through other sources, then yeah, I'm totally open to it. And so I don't want to knock him, and I hope it's real.
That's
and
my
I don't
thing.
and I don't
Yeah.
care if I'm covering. Like I'm a fan of James Fox, and I hope it's real.
I mean, as do I.
Yeah.
Right. Because like that's the thing that I'm not, and I'm sure you've seen probably tons of this, but I am not for this whole thing where it's like two people are set in teams. It's like the disclosure team versus the debunker team.
Right.
The point of this whole thing is to be, if there is stuff that is being in the sky, in the spaces that's threatening airspace, or whatever that might be, the stuff that's going on over Langley, there's others, all that stuff. That's the stuff that we need to pay attention to, and this bickering of like the pointing of the finger of like, because there were some people in that Twitter spaces that were when they were talking to this guy that were asking questions, the debunkers, they were asking questions that I don't have a problem with. They were saying like, hey, you
should try to debunk.
Of
If
course,
somebody's going to say that should be your initial reaction. Is like, I'm not sure if you're telling the truth,
especially if that's your gig.
If
your gig is like, look, you prove me wrong. Right.
Sure.
And if your things, well, you worked there at this time, this, and then, no problem. There's other people in there that were just being a dick to them and saying like, and it's like,
that's not cool.
That's not going to help.
No,
it's just not going to help, because it's like, the point is like, look, if it turns out, then it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
And it turns out that it's China, it's Russia, whatever it might be. Okay, just let's. You don't have to give me all the secrets in the military, but just tell me, what the hell am I supposed to be worried about, or what am I not supposed to be worried about?
Yeah.
If it's not, if you actually have the answers to the fact that we, like all the stuff with our mind, that we're able to do these things, in what world do you have the right to keep that shit secret?
Totally. But my guess would be a guy like that was probably more on the periphery and doesn't have the whole. He might have worked for the thing, but like I don't think he has the whole, top down. And I run into this with historical cases where it's like, Grusch in my piece with him or whatever is like Robert Sarbacher, like set up UFO secrecy with Oppenheimer. Well, there's stories about Sarbacher, this UFO researcher named William Steinman, who's a super deep UFO researcher, wrote a book called UFO Crash about the Aztec crash, which was a year after Roswell. And he has letters to Sarbacher, and he's like, is this UFO program real or whatever? And Sarbacher's like, it was real, but I was never read in. And it's this weird thing where he's, clearly he had some relation, and his son even said he was, putting cameras on, modified versions of V2 rockets to like chase these things because, that was the only thing that could get to the speed of, even close to the speed of the UFO or whatever. And I'm sure that was a futile effort. So like, and then he dealt too much with Townsend Brown. He's the head of the Washington National Labs. Like, there's too much with him. Where I'm like, okay, this dude definitely intersected with the UFO world. There's also a letter. There are letters between him and Wilbert Smith, who set up Project Magnet, which is the Canadian UFO research. Initial their Project Blue Book, if you will, in the 50s. And so there's like enough there where I'm like, okay, this dude was like knew a lot about UFOs. But then there's this letter where he writes back and he's like, I wasn't like, top of the pyramid. Like I wasn't really read in. Like maybe I had some peripheral, and who knows, maybe he's playing, that's a ruse to the guy, he's playing dumb. But then he does actually point the Steinman and some others to this guy named Dr. Eric Walker, who's president of Penn State, who says some very interesting things when they speak to him that we can get into. But my point in all of this is like, if you're talking about this hyper compartmentalized, hyper fragmented program, it's likely that whoever's going to come out is not going to be the top of the pyramid dude. It's going to be like, I took a material blindfolded from point X to point Z or whatever. And you're like, okay, great. Like, so that's disclosure. Like, and it had radiological materials that you can't even describe because you have no like background in any of that, material science or physics or
Well, that's what you're 100% right. And when you say that though, when you're talking about that's what disclosure is. So whatever, it's going to be a big document like that. Or what is the ultimate disclosure, right? Is it going to be like, so what about like going back to the whistleblower thing and adding into the disclosure thing? Because disclosure to me could come in a hearing like that, because if it's something along the lines of, let's say, I always get the name wrong. Is it Lukatsky? Is that
James Lukatsky? Yeah.
So Lukatsky talked about how on Jeremy Corbell's thing that they breached the hull.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If they get a guy like that in there to testify, and they have this type of stuff, they have these 35, 40 other people who are coming in to do this, and they actually get this hearing, is that what starts to really push forward disclosure, or is it something like you're saying, like, no, here's a video that's actually that the corridor crew can't say is fake,
right?
Like what is it to you?
I think that helps. Yeah, that definitely helps. If you get like a bunch of people who, from disparate sort of factions, or who like, it's clear they're not in like very tight coordination with each other.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we can corroborate all these facts. We all saw the same craft. It all came from this particular crash on this date or whatever. Like, all that's good.
Yeah.
Definitely helps. And then I still think you'll have like tons of data. I think a lot of this deals with like our epistemic openness more than we think.
Yeah.
Like it's like how many times, like I've had experiences. You had an experience. I don't know if you've had an experience.
I don't know.
Okay.
The answer is that because I think that
you saw something you sent me over text
twice. I think that you can in your head because you start doing this, you may think you see something, right?
So that is exactly what I'm trying to say. Is like
Right.
I think the only reason people doubt their own sight with these things is because we live, it's great, like David Foster Wallace, like, this is water. Like, if you're a fish, you're in the water. You
Right.
have no idea that you are swimming in the substrate. You glitch out of the substrate, you see a hull on top
Right.
or whatever. You don't know what it's carrying, what's going on up there, whatever. There's a Townsend Brown quote where he says the same thing, which I think belies a sort of worldview that's far more expanded than the average person's.
Yeah.
And so we're in water, and you see a thing that's outside of the water, and you convince yourself it never happened, and you
Right.
snap at. We live in the the quote Max Weber, this German philosopher, like the age of disenchantment, and so we are biased by the epistemological soup that we are like living in, and we snap things to a grid. And when something happens outside of that, you can't say it's magical or whatever, because we live in a random universe.
Right. Well, I've got the two things. I wrote him because I saw it. I was outside, and I was like, it looks like a star, but then it's like moving. And it's moving back and forth. And I was like, and I got it, and I sent it to him. I said, it's moving.
Yeah.
And then I was grilling, and this red thing with like almost looked like spikes, just kind of, and I got them both. I recorded both. I'll send them to you. I'll send them to you.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell it is.
Yeah.
But I was like, because of course, I could call my wife out, and I'm like, I go, look at it. She's like, you look like a lunatic sitting here in pajama pants staring at the sky. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably true, but I got both of them on video, so at least I did that.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to ask you also, Jessie, was that, you talked to, which I thought was hilarious too, when you found that diner, when you're talking about Dr. Masters.
Mike Master,
It was hilarious. So when you're talking to him, we've talked about this, Riley, many times. And then when we watched Jesse's thing with Masters, we said the same thing. He had the theory about the fact that these things are future humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Which kind of dovetails with the Townsend Brown stuff, too.
that's what I was going to say. Because of your research with that, because of your research, your interview with him.
Yeah.
What do you think of that theory?
I love it. I mean, there are little issues with it.
Yeah.
But what I like about it is if you're just going from a pure inductive, like we are looking at this scientifically, we don't know anything going in, and you're trying to theorize based on actual observables and what people have experienced, it's a far more likely theory. And here's why it's a far more likely theory. Yeah. What you're seeing is more likely to be like related to you if you're in a place. Like you're more likely to see the thing that is proximate to you than the thing that is, from Zeta Reticuli or Proxima Centauri b. Right. It's morphologically shaped like you. There are people who, like Grusch and others have said, well, maybe it's, and you have to leave this possibility open, maybe it's for ease of contact that they simulate themselves to look somewhat like us. But then why wouldn't they just look like us? They don't look like us. They look like us, but they kind of freak most people out.
Right.
Yeah, they're humanoid, but they freak us out. So there are millions of species on Earth. There is, maybe 20, bipedal species. We are the one hominid bipedal conscious species on Earth.
Right.
There are 20 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way. There are over 20 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way. There are over 1 trillion non-Earth-like planets in the Milky Way. I think it's estimated between like 800 billion and 3 trillion. So I'll just say over 1 trillion, right? The sheer probability of evolutionary convergence that you'd see a thing that looks not only very similar to you,
right,
but what any normal evolutionary biologist that doesn't give a shit about aliens would say that humans are evolving into due to these things like neoteny or paedomorphosis, these biological terms, which means your distant or your offspring, your distant offspring, looks like your current kids, and these things all look sort of childlike, and like the things that are becoming vestigial on us, like ears and nose, because we're not hunter gathering anymore.
Right.
Those are becoming smaller. The brain is more necessary than ever. Decision making is just the most important thing, and that's our cranial size is increasing.
Right. That's
right.
So if you actually look at if you treat this scientifically like any other field, I think that's more likely, and then you get the kind of historical personnel analysis of somebody like Townsend Brown, who's like super into time travel. And then you get the weird stuff. Talk about Steven Spielberg. There is a quote from, I think, Robert Liefeld, the Deadpool.
Robert Liefeld.
Yeah. And he's like, Spielberg told me point blank that, he's like, what is more likely? Is this our future selves monitoring, the past to ensure their own existence? Or is this, from some far off planet? And so he was implying like he knows that it's.
I gotta get. Rob's been on this show. I gotta ask him that because Rob.
There you go. You got the inside scoop
for sure.
Please and let me know what he says.
I should have you on with him next time.
Sounds great.
Rob just tweeted out because they got the new Deadpool trailer dropped today.
Oh, cool.
So
I love Deadpool.
It's fantastic. Deadpool
it's
Wolverine.
amazing.
It's really good. But that's great. I didn't know that about Rob, so that's good to know. But yeah, so I think that theory is fascinating to me in the same way. And I don't know if I made this thing up or this is something you've heard them all. So like, is there another theory out there? Because you could also see this happening, that speaking of all that, to where that's the religious people would probably get mad at me for even suggesting this, that we were placed here. This isn't even really our home.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I'd be very open to that. The reason I'd be open to that, or at least that humans are some sort of hybrid creature, or like there's something very different about humans than other animals. Obviously sort of intuitively that sort of feels right, but also like we're the only animals that we sleep more deeply than other animals. You can walk up to us during sleep and we sleep much more deeply. The ability to be self-referential, make art, poetry, all these sorts of things, create technology to a degree that is far beyond, flint and a spear that a monkey might carry around. Like we've taken it to such a far thing. I wouldn't be surprised. And then you have these sort of punctuated equilibria, which no evolutionary biologist can they call it that, but that's a placeholder term for this rapid speciation or jumps in the fossil record. Our cranial size is 3x from Homo habilis to Homo sapiens, from 2 million years ago to 300,000 years ago. There are all these anomalies with humans that I would not be surprised. And we have all this junk DNA that, we have no idea what the purpose of the DNA is. And so I just wouldn't be surprised if, and the brain is so weird. We don't understand the brain. There's no neuroscientist out there with a straight face who isn't full of shit, in my opinion, who can say, I know how the brain works. Yeah. You don't know how the fucking brain works. No way. And all the AI people who say it's like a classical computer, just strings, ones and zeros, it's like, you have no idea what you're talking about. And the AGI we're seeing now is, it's statistics on steroids, and it's not what's going on in here. This can learn with small data. That requires big data. There are all these sorts of really important differences that we can get into. But anyways, the long story short, I wouldn't be surprised if we were sort of, that we're hybrid creatures or placed here. Or
I don't know. But I want to go back on that tech what you were just talking about, because to me, it seems like there has been kind of an increased awareness in general that the American government has been involved in kind of silencing scientific breakthroughs with the help of kind of major tech and aerospace companies. So you're a doc. I thought it was a great addition to humanity's potential in general. The breakthrough coming from Townsend Brown.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of different stories like that, right? So, so with that in mind, though, do you think that we're going to discover any new physics or any new tech that the public will know soon?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's in the zeitgeist, and I think these discoveries don't occur the way people think they occur. And that's a little trippy, but like I think consciousness needs to be at a certain level. I mean, if you think about all these technologies, they're really dual use. So they're always either saving of humanity or destructive of humanity. Think about nuclear.
Right.
You have nuclear fusion powering the world. That's like, Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
But then it's apocalyptic as well.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of these things, actually the quote around Townsend Brown's work is, it would make a thermonuclear bomb look like a child's firecracker. And so, you know, if you want to, you know, his thing would be marrying electromagnetism in some way with gravity, which would be, you know, what Einstein tried to solve for mathematically for the rest of his career. It's kind of the holy grail of physics. So if you were to do something like that, I think it would unlock all sorts of free energy, like a lot of really cool stuff, anti-gravity stuff, and I mean, how you would apply it exactly is beyond my pay grade. But I do think it would unlock a lot of that. And then it would also unlock, I think, some very destructive sort of stuff. Yeah. Having said that, I think we are in a very apocalyptic time right now. We're in a multipolar nuclear world. And I actually see it, especially on the venture capital side, which I still, you know, invest in companies. And I see an openness to heterodox, really outside the, you know, crazy ideas, Hail Mary ideas that I didn't 4 or 5 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago, it was like, we're going to build, you know, the next Stripe, like a payments API. We're going to build like accounting SaaS or like or crypto, you know, all this stuff. And, you know, there's still a lot of the froth and BS. I think more and more people are actually open to real novel fundamental science breakthroughs. And it happens during times of breakdown. Think about the 20s, you know, 30s and 40s.
Well, that's what a lot of stuff that Avi Loeb's talking about too, right? Like, so he's been talking about the stuff that programs, a lot of it is, recently they had a whole article that he was, that a lot of that anti-gravity stuff that he thinks these things are coming through portals and things of that nature. Is that just kind of what's your take on Avi Loeb, by the way? Yeah, I've had, you know, friendly interactions with him personally. I think whatever novel breakthrough we see will not occur through academia, and so that might be the most contrarian thing I'll say. But I'm sure of it because it's just. It's so sclerotic. You have to constantly ask for funding. You have this publish repairs thing. So much of your energy goes towards optics, towards just like making things look good or whatever. And kudos to him and Gary Nolan for doing the thing that at least 5-6 years ago was considered unpopular. And you know, actually studying aliens and taking it seriously, and like, you know, to I'm sure the detriment at, you know, in the cafeteria of Stanford and Harvard at times. So I think that's awesome, and I love that he's doing what he's doing. But I also think there's somewhat of a myopic focus because of what we were going back to, the kind of epistemological soup you're in. You're at Harvard. It's hard to think in a really outside the Overton window way. Sure. You're kind of stuck in the, you know, you have your blinders on a little bit. You're stuck in kind of these older frameworks. And he comes from kind of a more traditional astrophysics framework. It's cool to hear that he's talking about, you know, traversable wormholes and stuff like that. You got to. So that's awesome. Yeah, it was good, Riley.
Yeah, no, all this stuff that you're talking about, Jesse, like it makes me think of the world we live in right now is so just divisive. Yeah. We are just constantly, it's, you know, in the movie space that we were in for many years, and I'm no longer a part of, it's like, you know, I love this Star Wars movie, and my God, you can get 1 million people that start yelling at you. No, you don't. You know, it's just they want to fight, whether it's about movies, whether it's about politics, whether it's about this and science. And all you're talking, I'm sitting here taking it in going, you know, are we ready for any of this kind of, whether it's, you know, technology that takes us to the next place of evolution, whether it's aliens, whether it's portals, interdimension, the Soul Foundation coming out and saying like we have a disclosure plan to like release certain things here to get people ready. You know what I mean? It's like, what's your take on
society and how we would
society? How would we even get there? Because I don't think we're capable of any of that right now.
And would it start another religion is the other
Would
question.
it start another religion? Would you start fighting that because your religion is being questioned because something comes out that might disprove or prove? Or, you know what I mean?
I think we need a religious revival. And, you know, we were talking about kind of parapsychology manifestation earlier. Yeah. And there's a quote from the book of Mark, I believe. And I'm going to botch it, so I'm just going to paraphrase it. But it's like, what you measure, you get more of. And it's just this like beautiful, like what you focus your attention on, you'll see more of in your life. And I think it's a more mystical thing than just like the prosaic. Like obviously if you're like looking out for something, you'll like notice it more. You like call it into your life more. And so that's why I think like we think too much about the UFOs in this abstract, like, are they real? Does it exist? Like, I think what your orientation towards all of this is like very important. And, Yeah, I think if we don't have a religious revival, and we're on the brink with both Russia and China. I mean, like, China could use everything that's going on in the Middle East to take Taiwan tomorrow. I don't think they will, but that's like
scary.
It's really scary. Russia's probably going to control at least eastern Ukraine by the end of the year by all kind of national security expert accounts, and we're just spending more and more money. Our debt is completely untenable. The American dream is hanging by a thread, and then our political future's in infinite superposition because we have two very elderly men running against each other,
fighting for the throne.
One of whom is sort of almost like a taxidermied stuffed scarecrow who can like barely stand up and is like controlled by this sort of war machine in a way he doesn't understand, but also weirdly by like wokeism. I don't know how those are compatible. And then the other who's like a complete narcissist and also sucks. And so it's like I don't. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's a scary time.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. When we come, I mean, it's like you have to pick one of them.
Yeah,
and okay, I picked this person. How dare you?
Yeah,
it's back to something with the UFO community. It's like everybody's against one another, and you're in this volatile time right now to where the religious aspect. I agree with you. It does need a revival, but it also it all links together, right? Like because when it comes to religion side of it, there's so much mention of like the angels and the demons side of this.
Yeah,
right? So even Jacques Vallée.
I think that's a good way to actually conceptualize it.
Yeah,
because it makes it more real also in your life. It's like because I think it can be demonic. Like talk about it to all the Skinwalker people that were doing stuff with NIDS into ATIP and stuff. It's like they were traumatized.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that never want to set foot on that ranch ever again. Like I actually had a bad experience on it too.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you talked about it?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Well, and we can get into the Jacques. I cut you off earlier, but there. There it was somewhat anticlimactic. It was like a tri-field meter went off or something because we experienced some electromagnetic anomaly, like nothing like super crazy. But after, and this is probably a bad story for a podcast because I can't tell all of the details, but I had a month after that I was like in a dark energy vortex. And the one thing I can't say actually is it culminated in me being locked in a building with I was like one of the only people in this building, and there was like an armed gunman in the building.
What?
Yeah, and it was like that, but that was like another day. Almost, it was a little more notable than the other day. But like for this month, that was Wednesday. Like it was
Holy
like a gnarly fucking like a lot of weird bad stuff was happening. And there's this thing called the hitchhiker effect, which if you talk to like Colm Kelleher or James Lukatsky or any of these people, they'll say they experience. And for them, I think it's a little more paranormal. It's like orbs floating across their room or whatever. But yeah, I experienced some bad
stuff over there.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sure you've since you got into all of this, I'm sure you've gone through every range of
emotion.
Yeah, like to where like you get like, holy shit, this is going to change the way that I just look at the world. And then, like you just said, then there's other times you're like, why the fuck am I doing this?
Yeah,
like, right?
All the time. Yeah,
I'm sure.
And that's why I really think I think the religious way. That's why I like the angels and demons framing. I think you were getting at the sort of passport to Magonia, kind of American cosmic theory. So
basically, Jacques Vallée, the knowledge and the investigation of the angelic and the demonic beings. How does how does the work of, let's say, Diana Pasulka also and Jeffrey Kripal, right?
Yeah, Kripal, yeah.
How does that fit into this investigation?
Yeah, well, I think it's comports it or situates it. It's always it starts in 1947, and now we're disclosing. When in reality, all civilizations prior to us, including many indigenous populations to this day, believe in star people and battles between good and evil,
right?
And angels, demons, that sort of thing. But we now. Because we live in the age of materialist reductionism, so we trace back over that, and we're like, they didn't really believe in that. But if you were to talk to the average person in the Dark Ages, fuck yeah, they'd believe in all that stuff, fully. They'd be like, I saw a demon yesterday, or I felt an angel touch me, or whatever. And so, like, that's the language that they would probably use to describe this.
Right.
And I actually think it's healthy to think of things in those terms. And the reason I think that is because a lot of the material world is fucked and
Yeah.
very evil.
Yeah.
And you know, and I can't say we are immune to it living in LA. You know, I think it's sort of an epicenter of a lot of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think thinking about that and thinking about the whole thing in those terms personalizes it in a way where it's like, okay, I want to stay in the light. And there's, you know, it's a classic Prometheus or Faust, this sort of archetypal myth of a person going for semantic truth.
Yeah.
They just want the truth, but they sell their souls for the truth. And a lot of people in the UFO world would sell their soul to know just the facts of what's going on in the UFO world. And that, I think, is a very... And I'm saying this from experience, not from me on a perch. I'm saying this because at times I've fallen into this of like, oh, I just want to know the truth. I'll do anything. And you can find yourself in very weird places. And I think
locked in a closet with a gunman running around the place.
There you go. There you go. There you go. And I think really leading a good local life. Like if you're obsessed with UFOs all day and like, you know, you got stuff with your marriage or something or your kid or your career.
Yeah.
You focus on that stuff. That stuff's more important.
We talk about that a lot with why maybe mainstream media is not covering some of this stuff and why aren't people like my father being like, hey, Schumer was up there talking about UAPs and he's like, I need to pay the bills over here and do this because that's where we are. I mean, we want to, like your wife says, I need to see somebody come down and talk to me, alien,
in order for it to be real.
In order for it to be real.
But I also hear what you're saying, though, and where it's like, it's why I have this. I do a story a day. I tune into what's going on, but then I try to push back on it because when I first got into it, I was like, I was watching everything. I was watching you, and then I would then I would watch all the News Nation stuff, and and I was like, and it was getting like, I get it. I was telling myself, I get it, but chill out for a second. Yeah, do all your regular stuff. Be informed on everything, and like as I said to you in the beginning, what we've always tried to maintain is, I got to take this from that point of view. Those people that we're talking about that aren't paying attention to it, that, you know, watching a baseball game and we just wish they would turn on the news and see a story about this. I want to pretend that I'm that person and I'm that voice for that person, that we're that voice for that person going, hey, like, I don't know a quarter of the shit that you do, right? And I mean, like, I don't know if my brain could fucking hold it, but I love listening to a guy like you because I can get downloaded on some of this stuff because I'm finding myself getting more and more fascinated, as you were just talking about, with the consciousness side of it. Like, I'm not convinced that dreams are what we think dreams are.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah.
Like,
Same.
I'm having, and because I've been paying attention to my dreams more now too.
Cool. Yeah.
And I feel like, and not that I can remember all of them, but I feel that when I'm there, like little details, it's just weird how much I can like think inside of my dreams the same way I think in reality.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm thinking the same things. Like I can feel my, like, you know, when you're just talking, you're like, as you guys are doing right now, there are thoughts that are formulating inside of your brains right now. You can hear yourself thinking. I hear myself thinking in my dreams while the dreams are happening.
Totally.
And like that to me, it's like, I just feel like there's more to it.
And what is thinking? Like, we think we're actively thinking like it's this super conscious thing, right? But if like, what is daydream? What's happening?
Right.
Like what? Like what is that? Is that you, or are you an antenna for a stream of things that's coming into you? And why are you tapping into that stream of things?
Right.
And so it's like there are all these really important questions with consciousness that we haven't answered. And the dreaming thing, I think, is fascinating. I think it's in some sense an encounter with the subconscious.
Yeah.
I think it's also an encounter with, maybe in certain cases, because I think they're precognitive dreams, you could think of it as like different parts of the probability function or something, where it's like a certain timeline that you might not even be on or something.
I mean, like a time, because like because I had mentioned that at one point, and I remember someone saying to me, like, well, but in some dreams you're flying. Like, well, the rules of physics maybe work different in different places.
Yeah,
and it's like I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. So
have you read the like 3-body problem?
I started watching the show.
Yeah,
I didn't see the.
I saw the first episode. I'm definitely intrigued.
But it's interesting. It's interesting. What is it particularly in the 3-body problem?
Well, it's sort of like physics is, there are two versions of physics that I just love the analogies as thought experiments. So like we think when we drop a pencil, it's like, it's just, Newton's gravity. That's it. In this case, it's like maybe we're on a 2D plane, and maybe there's there are 3D people or something. So maybe we're in a 3D plane. There's a 4D or 5D people or whatever. But if you're on a 2D plane and you're a scientist and you see a bunch of, bullet holes because people are shooting at the metal that you're standing on because you're on the 2D plane, you're going to be obsessed with the holes, and you're going to be like, oh, this is like those UFOs, like, oh, that's crazy. But you have no idea that there's like a person like shooting bullets and like erratically into that. And then the other, so that's the shooter theory, and then the other is like the farmer theory, which is like at 11 a.m. every time you're turkey and you're some animal or some like livestock. At 11 a.m., the farmer comes in and feeds you predictably every day. And so it's like the sun comes up and comes down every day, unless you're a fan of David Hume or whatever, that's it, predictably. And we think of that as science, right? We think of it as a scientific law. But what if, one day, Thanksgiving's coming, they're just going to eat you. And, and I'm not saying that that's like perfectly analogous to this, but we have no idea if like we could very well be living in some kind of construct.
Yeah, and that's the what is that? The
Matrix.
No, but what's it called? The theory.
Simulation theory.
Simulation.
Simulation theory. Like all those, because that one, it's like I don't rule anything out, but it's just like in it. But of course, like right away, you go, I don't know, because you do see movies like The Matrix, and you automatically think, well, that idea came from somewhere. But then you start to think about it where you look at Atari, when Atari came out, and then you look at, and that was 40 years ago. And now you look at, you put on an Oculus or whatever it's called now, the Metas, and you put that on now and what you can see now. What's virtual reality going to be like in 500 years?
Totally.
Right? So who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate that I got illusion. I got illusion.
I can listen to you talk.
I know, for sure.
Jump in when I can.
Yeah, we got to do it again. But I want you to tell people about your channel. What are you working on next? I want to know selfishly.
Yeah, well, I actually just got in touch with RFK Jr.'s campaign, so I might do something with.
Are you really?
Yeah,
really? He's real big in disclosure too, isn't he?
It's funny. I think actually the thing I've heard about him is like, his take on the whole thing is like, I can't deal with another conspiracy. Yeah. But I'm going to bring up because you mentioned the letter about JFK that was reported. Yeah. Again, I don't know about the veracity of it or whatever, but was supposedly FOIA'd in 2006, and he's talking about basically asking for access to the director of the CIA, John McCone at the time. And he's asking for access to information on unknowns in space, and he's asking for the data. And so I'll bring up stuff like that with him. And I think there's might be a Marilyn Monroe connection with JFK too. And so I'll be like, dude, your family, might be
the underground tunnels at the White House to get her in there. So.
That too.
All that stuff. So that's what you're working on next.
I think something with him, and then. UFO wise, I'm going to talk to this guy who wrote a book called Time Loops named Eric Wargo. I'm going to do something with him. There's a guy named Riz Virk who wrote about the simulation hypothesis. I want to do something with him.
Oh man,
and
that's great.
Yeah, I don't know much more.
And then you were at the hearings last time, weren't you?
I was,
at the hearings. That must have been insane.
A trip, man.
It must have been. So would you, if it happens again? Do you feel confident that you'd be at the next ones?
I don't know. If it feels right, you know, that one just like it was perfect. I was actually taking a break from my show, and I was with my buddy Amar, who's in this group called Yes Theory.
They were in the video with
They're in the video with me, and they did their own video. And they're awesome. And like honestly, I wouldn't have done it if it weren't. I was kind of disillusioned. I was in my like little UFO lull, like fuck all this stuff.
Yeah.
And he kind of convinced me to do it, and it just felt really right. And being there was so cool. And so. If it feels right, I'm down.
Yeah. Well, dude, thank you for coming in and talking with us.
I appreciate you guys. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
It was very great. Make sure that you check out Jessie's channel, American Alchemy. It's here on YouTube. It's fantastic. You can, if you haven't watched the interview with Grusch, haven't watched the other ones that we talked about today, especially the Townsend Brown one, you should check it out. We've covered it before, but you guys should check it out for sure. It's fantastic. And then we got to get you on again.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. Yeah, I'll move out in a month. So
yeah, me too. So, but I'm also we do shows where we do virtual stuff.
Oh, easy.
So
okay.
Easy stuff.
Sounds great.
Mark Riley, where can I find you?
Find me on the internet at Riley Around, REILLY. See you around.
If you're brand new to this channel, you've never been here before, hit that button, man. Help us get to 200,000. We're trying. We're growing. We're moving. So we need you guys to help us out. And also, Down to Earth with Kristian Harloff. Monday through Friday, we do a news piece on the UAP phenomenon. So thanks. Put your comments in there and put the link for the sponsors in there. If you want to help out the show, get yourself something good. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.